This is just a very small tip, but if you're ever landing on one of these POIs that has a random vending machine, make sure you try to get enough gold just by farming around the POI to actually try and open it. As you can see here, Th0masHD, he gets one of these suppressed pistols that tracks people as you're fighting them. So you just tag them once and it tracks them because you kind of shakedown effect. It's extremely broken for fights, as you're going to see in a second here. And oftentimes you can get things like chug cannons or peppers or something out of this. A lot of the times you're just going to get random stuff. But over a course of a 10-game tourney, if you're opening one of these vending machines at like 8 times, you're probably going to get something good that's going to change how you play. This is a pretty useful way that you guys can get refreshed during mid-game. So all you need to go ahead and do is hit one of those bounce pad things while you've got a crystal on, and you won't take full damage unless you go to my count video. That's how you take full damage. So as you can see here, they basically get perfectly above somebody's base. Th0masHD comes out with a gold spans, very dangerous combination, and then you drop straight down and gets an insta kill on somebody. Completely catches them off guard, and then from here they don't really need to wipe this full trio, so they just kind of leave it at that. They just get the one kill, get the loot, and they're kind of chilling in a really good spot on second zone. Okay, this is something very simple, but when it comes to box fighting as a trio, there is one thing that you always need to do. Make sure you commit in at the same time together. Don't try to go for any kind of crazy flanks. Make sure you're able to pump trade and out damage the opponents at the same time. So you can see here, these two are fighting with each other. Queasy's using that pistol that I mentioned earlier to actually get some tracking tags and actually kills one straight off the bat just using that pistol since it's so strong. And then from here, they just commit in together all at the same time. Very simple stuff. You don't need to overcomplicate this. Just all going at the same time. It prevents things like this guy camping behind the corners to maybe try and kill Thomas. It prevents things like that just because your teammate is right there next to him to get the trade kill. And then from here, as I mentioned earlier, mechanics aren't the most important thing for fighting. As long as you go ahead and approach somebody and you actually use piece control, you really don't need to be too flashy. You can see here, Ange just gets the cone, gets the back walls, completely misses everything else, but it's completely fine because this guy's trapped and he gets the kill. This is just a very simple way that you can get a refresh on 50-50 zone here. As you can see, these guys are positioned on 4th zone. There's a lot of other teams that are going to be rotating over them to actually come into zone, as you can see here. So they're intentionally not rotating early, just so they can try to go for a kill here, and then they'll all be catmats going to endgame. So how do they actually go ahead and do this? They basically just wait for this team to rotate over them. They let the first two pass, and a lot of times there'll be somebody lurking back, maybe giving some shots, and they just wait for that guy to run along. As you can see here, they get some damage on him as he runs past, and at this point, Queasy does some nice pre-lits to actually catch this guy as he comes forward. He ends up getting sprayed by other people, but it's completely fine. They get all the loot from it in a very safe way. They can take him back into their old base, and now they've got enough mats that they're all going to be full capped going into moving, and they're also going to be able to tap into the end of 50-50 zone here as well in a second. Okay, so how do you go ahead and rotate one of these max distance 50-50 rotates? And the way that Queasy does it is to try to put his team into the best position possible while taking minimal risks. As you can see, something a lot of people don't think about, just shooting at teams. As you can see, he's shooting at that team there just so they build a little bit. So that allows Queasy's flight path, so when he's in the air, to be as safe as possible. So he's going to wait for his teammates to get near him. He pads first, so he can land early and build the extra floors for his teammates. And he pads and he goes completely left side of the storm here. So he avoids going into that really open space with a lot of line of sight. So as you can see, there's a lot of players that could beam him as he flies over their head, and he goes completely wide. All of these players have already left. There's old builds here, there's trees here that can be completely fine to land on, and he actually makes a really good call in terms of not landing on this team. If you land on this team, it's very easy for one of your players to get edited in or just get full box something and then dying. So he lands on these old builds and then immediately places some floors for his teammates, as you can see, and expands out a lot in metal just to make sure they don't get server sprayed. And because he's on edge of storm here, he's still on a really high layer, as you can see, and he's got really no risk in terms of getting sprayed by anybody, because he can only get sprayed by one direction, which is very nice to see as well. Really good rotate by him, and he's just consistently doing these really nice 50-50 rotates where he's put a lot of thought into where they're going to end up and how to do it in the safest way as possible. As you can see, what I said about not landing on somebody's old base, one player landed on old base and they've already just instantly gone ahead and died to this team that's boxed up looking for a kill. Okay, so this is a really nice height take that Queasy does at the start of first moving, and it's in a pretty map conservative way. So as you can see, they get first moving kind of pulling back to them, and because of this layer that they landed on earlier, they're already pretty high up, and they're also on the natural high ground. So anything on this south side of the zone is going to be very hard to play for height from. So they're basically playing for this, and they're immediately going to go ahead and crank up, and they're doing this in a really smart way. So as you can see here, when it comes to first moving, a lot of teams mess up where they're all split. You can do a situation like this, as you can see, where you're going to have two players at the front and then one playing ultimate, but a lot of times the player on ultimate is just going to get landed on, and maybe these two at the front are going to have a hard time of helping them out. So what these guys do is actually the correct call. I think you guys should start doing as well. They immediately all go up and they get onto a set of floors together. This means if anyone lands on them on the ultimate height, they're literally just going to instantly die because they just need to get pumped twice. If anyone lands below them, they're going to have to crank up, and at that point these guys can either decide to PG for height on this side, or they can just decide to pad away. And the thing is, all three of them up here together, it's very scary. People know it's a good show just based on how they're playing. So they're completely fine to just sit up here and possibly get some kills up here. Now, when it comes to holding height from here, obviously don't just fall to our pin. You're just going to get sprayed out. It's going to be very hard to hold height. You use a lot of mats. So what these guys do is they decide to pad forward and go for where these players are taking height. In my opinion, they could have done something slightly different here. Rather than going over and actually landing on this team that's playing for height, they could have maybe landed on this hill on the left side and done kind of a different height take where they all spray or something similar to that, or they try to PG from the opposite side of the zone. Instead, they decide to land directly on this team, and they get quite unfortunate. They just got a little bit lucky with their glides here. As you can see, Queasy could have full boxed and killed this one player, and they would have had a really easy height take. Unfortunately, they end up all dropping down. They tried to PG for it for a second, as you can see. They tried to look for some damage, but these players are investing so many mats at this point, it's not really worth continuing to fight for it, because if you kill them, you're not going to get too much. So Queasy makes the correct call in the second here, where he's immediately just going to go ahead and drop down and start tarping. And a good thing with trio tarp, as I said in previous videos and Trio's masterclass as well, is you always need to be very direct in terms of what edge you're playing on. As you can see here, he's playing a right storm edge. He gets into a really nice position where he can full hit up for a second. As soon as the next storm pulls here, he's going to continue and maintain that edge. He's not swapping to left side or to going down and up layers. Instead, he's just focused on holding right side of storm, making sure they're in a good layer, so he gets up a few layers instead of an obstruction and a team below them, and he gets into a really clean position here. Again, making sure he's sticking to that right hand side of the zone at all times so he can do as cheap a tarp as possible. And you can see here he's fully got onto right side of storm. All he needs to continue to do is just go ahead and tarp, and you can leave that right wall open. There's nobody really on that side, and these guys are basically full chilling at this point to just continue and tarp and then play for something later on and also get refreshes. So this is just something very minor, but it's definitely something that I think people need to work on. It's when you're doing these spray downs, high to have a high success rate. I see people doing spray downs multiple times per game and they never get a kill from it, whereas the 2 times I've seen these guys do a spray down, they get a kill from it both times. So how do they actually do this in a correct way where they consistently get kills? The thing is, you need to make sure you put yourself under a team, obviously, that is likely to get sprayed. So as you can see here, these guys are late rotating in, they're getting sprayed by multiple different people. So Queasy goes ahead and opens up, he covers all these angles so they're not at risk of this guy getting out. He also does a wide floor edit, and at this point he starts shooting the suppressed AR, just so he's a little bit sneakier to break this initial cone, and now all of them are ready, and they start shooting with their regular ARs, as you can see here. And just the fact that these guys are getting sprayed by multiple people from the front means he's holding those walls, he gets put into a cone, ends up falling straight down, and they get a kill, and now he's obviously got pretty decent loot, where these guys are going to be going stacked into the same game. So one thing that I see teams mess up on a really high level consistently is the fact that they need to be playing for their win conditions. And win conditions in trios is either having height with enough mats and heal off to win the game, or having low ground claimed and having enough heal off to actually win the game from that as well. And you do need to get a lot more refreshes on low ground since you use a lot more mats. So how do you play for those 2 win conditions? You have to make sure that you set them up earlier in the game. Are you looking around the kind of territory that you're in and figuring out which win conditions mean best? This is something that you can do more consistently in cash cup lobbies. So as you can see here, let's just take a look at the terrain. It's around one of these UFOs, it's around stealthy stronghold, there's a lot of divots and stuff like that, right? And there's also the walls that make it very difficult to play low ground and win a game from low ground. So how do these guys set up that win condition of high ground, as I mentioned earlier? And the thing is, you don't need to be doing this as soon as possible. The win condition only really needs to be done and in place by about 9th zone, in my opinion. Okay, so you're going to see how these guys do this. First of all, they're just padding, saving a lot of their mats, and they're going to land on high layer on second moving, as you can see here. As soon as they land, they don't even look for a refresh or look for anything like that, right? What do? Immediately just start griefing height. They want to make these guys who have taken height on first moving burn as many mats as possible. So they're going to keep spraying them, keep burning through all their mats, try to make them get griefed as much as possible. And then after they've gone ahead and done this, they don't actually fully commit to the height take. Maybe if they knocked one of these guys, or maybe they just kind of show that they have no mats, they could possibly go up for it. They're just kind of looking and setting that idea in their mind that they can go for height later on. And when does this height take actually take place? A lot later in the game. I'll skip forward to when it actually takes place. They kind of just play mid ground and low ground for a little while, and then they realize, okay, we griefed height earlier, we've got enough stuff to win this game if we go for height at the correct moment here. So let's go ahead and take how they do it. Okay, so earlier I said that they've actually gone ahead and griefed height as much as possible. How are they actually going to do this height take, considering they're playing mid ground in this late zone? So it pulls into 9th zone, so that's what I'm talking about, getting that win condition in and setting the seed of it earlier. So one of them drops a pad to Queasy, they're going to go ahead and pad back out in storm, so it's really off guard. It's going to catch a lot of top teams off, especially if they just start dropping down at this point, and all of them triple pad up to height at the same time. And the important thing whenever you do one of these height plays is to make sure one person's getting the attention, which is Queasy, and the other ones are trying to do some damage. So Th0masHD, he's intentionally landing back in the storm, using his blockers to try to damage these guys and force them from dropping off height. And as you can see, they've got way more mats from playing mid ground. and conserving a lot more, plus that griefing earlier allows them a really easy height take and a really easy win the rest of this game. They set up for heal off, and as you can see here, the low or mid ground team really can't be playing for it at all. As you can see, there's literally just loads of divots and stuff that I was saying earlier. It makes it very difficult to claim low or even play a mid ground layer in my opinion, and these guys just punish them and end up winning the game with heal off as well. Okay, so this is a slight variation of a height take that you can do that Queasy's Trio does a lot. So as you can see here, you want to make sure that obviously you're pretty stacked going into endgame, you've all got pretty decent mats, and having a pepper on really helps height take just because you can do it a lot quicker than the team holding height. Okay, so one nice thing quickly that Queasy does before he goes is he builds these extra walls just to prevent the teammates getting pumped by somebody. A lot of the times, if you're the IGL or whatever and you're hitting the pad first, somebody's going to edit up and try looking for a beam on your teammate or a pump on your teammate. So just doing those walls really helps stopping down and delaying the rotate by one of you getting damaged. Okay, so Queasy goes ahead and lands on front side here on a high layer and immediately starts cranking up, and he makes sure to actually go to the effort of getting in the end of zone, as you can see here. He's basically fully in the end of first moving, and now he's starting to look up at height. And what are his teammates doing? Th0masHD is looking from kind of a mid angle. He's basically going up directly below them, and Anas is sneaking up from the back. This works really nicely because the guys are going to go ahead and say, oh, there's one player looking up from front side, and they'll assume the rest of the players are looking up from front side as well. As you can see here, Queasy's basically getting the attention. He's using his AR to try beam these guys, and they immediately all start coming over towards front side. Thomas is going from up as the middle, as I said earlier, and Anas is sneaking around the back, and he's already done a massive amount of damage to this player here, just from sneaking around the back. It's very important that you have the guy at the back, possibly the charge, because it is very good for those long range hits, and also the whites as well, just so they can flank and storm. Okay, so Anas has done so much damage that they're basically useless. Now all he has to make sure all he does is he stays alive, while Queasy actually looks up for height. Okay, so kill one player as they go up for height. Another team goes ahead and lands up on ultimate, but they make sure that they all just chop them out and do damage to them as they're falling. So you guys basically get the idea. They're basically all going up from different angles. Queasy's getting the attention on front side. As you can see here on second moving, while Anas and Thomas are still fighting for height on the back side, what is Queasy doing? He's running with a pepper towards complete front side, as you can see here. He's not even healing, and he's basically just securing height on front side in case these two lose it at the back to somebody padding up. Really good job by these guys to actually take height. It's a little bit scuffed from now on, but you can kind of get the general idea. They low pad forward, get to where Queasy's building up on front side, and Anas gets a kill on this other guy trying to play height solo for some reason, and then from here they've got a really easy height game. They can get a lot of kills. Also, one brief thing to note is when these guys actually get high ground finally, and they kind of had to stop fighting for it, Anas is the guy playing ultimate. Again, you need to make sure you've got the roles set out in your trio and you've practiced them a couple of times in scrims, where as soon as you take height, the one player that's maybe doing this sneaking, and they're going to be the one fighting for it the majority of the time and trying to do that damage, probably would be good for them to have a charge, especially for flyers and those long range hits, as I mentioned. And also they're going to be the one playing ultimate later on, and they don't drop off ultimate too early. As you can see, he's dropping mats to his teammates. He's not even bothering to heal. He's just making sure he secures ultimate, and nobody else can go up for height and take it from them. So one thing that I think is definitely underrated this season by top trios is just making sure you're having some players in your trio run a charge where possible, and if they're comfortable doing it. These guys are obviously both really insane with a charge. It actually works out really nicely in their favour here. They're both running around with 0 mats. They end up playing together as a duo for a long time in this endgame filled with trios, and actually do really well just because they're using the charge. As you can see here, Anas kills this player that's somewhat decent HP just because he out damages him with a charge. And at this point, all they need to do is just run around as a duo and make sure they charge up their charges to scare other players from peeking them. As you can see here in a second, you're going to see there's two full trios chopping through, and they basically completely avoid coming towards these guys because they're sitting there with charges, and they also get a massive amount of damage on them as they run past and get a kill from it as well. It is really strong. I definitely recommend you guys try taking charges more often and getting a little bit better with them, especially when it comes down to these endgame situations. It is really unlosable if you just play with a charge correctly and you play proper angles, as you can see what these guys do here in a second. So both going to drop towards low ground, they end up killing the player down on low, and actually converting this and win the game from this position on low ground to the charge.